Hey, before we get into today's episode, if you're a podcast host or guest, listen up. I've produced over 200 podcast episodes and guested on 50 podcasts just in 2025 alone. And let me tell you, nothing grows your audience or builds trust faster than being in front of the right listeners. That's why I created my podcast tour offer. I'll help you map out your topics, strategize your message, and find you the most aligned podcasts and audiences to get you and your business in front of. So if you've ever thought, I just wish more eyes were on my work, this is your sign. Let's get you on a podcast tour. You can find all the details in the show notes. Just look for podcast tour. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back. Today I have a special guest, Kayla Dean. She's a copywriter and messaging strategist for creatives, coaches, and service providers. As a writer with both literary training, a master's in English literature, and 7+ years of proven conversion expertise. And you guys, these numbers are awesome and super high. She brings a rare combination of artistic ability and commercial results. She's a strong believer in human-created copywriting in the age of AI. And I'm excited to dive into this because it is such a hot topic right now. So we're going to talk about why most AI copy sounds the same. And also she's going to tell you how you can fix it. Welcome, Kayla, to the show.
I'm so excited to be here.
Let's dive in with what first pulled you into copywriting and messaging work.
My background is in English literature. I always grew up writing, just always really loved it. Reading, writing, like all of that good stuff. Got to college. I wasn't really sure what I was going to end up doing. And, once I got out of grad school, by that point, I had taught classes. I had done internships. For a while, I had written for like a local city week. So I'd done like a lot of different writing in a lot of ways. I'd worked at a literary magazine. So I'd done so many different things at that point. And it wasn't until I was out of school and in my career, I discovered what copywriting was. Obviously, I knew like someone had to be like writing the ad, writing the stuff on the internet. I always heard that. Then I really dived into copywriting and just ended up really loving it. I actually started out my first copywriting clients. This was like coming up on almost 8 years ago. I actually started on Fiverr Pro, was like the first work that I did. And that kind of like got me in the door. I learned a lot. And then I went out and started like finding my own clients. And I really found my way into like the creative community. And I found out that I really loved working with fellow creatives, people who, are more visual creatives, service providers, wedding industry coaches. So just ended up finding out like there was this whole world out there of people making their own work, doing their own jobs, finding their own way forward that wasn't a traditional path. And that was something that really resonated with me. That's what I really love to do, is helping people who, kind of are off the traditional path, doing something creative, making their words, making their messaging really stand out so they can book clients.
That's so interesting too, because back in our day when we went to college, it's like we weren't even aware of some of the options. Like we didn't really know that this was a choice, that you could be in business for yourself, that you could go find people that actually want what you're good at. And I love the off the beaten path, breaking the mold instead of just sort of trying to fit in this box that maybe we were told to or programmed to, and just kind of kicking that to the curb.
Definitely.
Talking about AI then, how has that first changed the copy landscape? And do you think it's for better or for worse?
Oh my God, it's changed everything. I remember like a couple of years ago, I was first hearing about AI and I was like, whatever, it's not going to go anywhere. It wasn't really on my radar for a while. And then I started seeing like more and more people using it. And at first I was really scared. I was like, oh no, like this is going to eliminate copywriters. This is going to eliminate everything. This is going to be really bad. And we can't see the future. But, it's funny because like the more I see like what AI does, like the gaffes it makes, the errors it makes, and not just that, but like the way that it just like really smooths out perspectives is something that I've really seen. I think for a while, like something that I was seeing is for a time, like less and less people were hiring copywriters. Me and a lot of my copywriter friends, like we were seeing like real, slowdowns in our businesses and going, what's going on? And people are using AI. And I think that we've kind of circled back around to a point where like a lot of the people that I've worked with in the last 6 to 12 months have been people who like they tried writing with AI, they've DIY'd with it before, and they're just like, this is not it. This is not working for me. And what I find is like, okay, yeah, it can write a sentence. It can, it can write words. It can write a sentence. But I always find that like, not only I like as a professional can tell, but people out there who like are not writers, who are not professionals, they can tell too. Even if they don't know exactly what it is they're feeling, like they get this like sort of feeling. Something that I've kind of seen in the industry is it has changed everything. It is an option now. I think especially when people are like newer to business, I think sometimes when people like, they have their websites and they're like, oh my God, I've got to fill it with something. They use AI. So I think that something I've been seeing a lot of, especially like in a lot of the website audits that I've been doing is, people do come in with like partially written AI copy and they're just like, something is like not clicking and I don't know what it is. And I think what we're really seeing right now is a little bit of like a course correction. I think that we're seeing a lot of people go, okay, maybe I do need a human touch. And not just because the copywriters say that we should, but because we actually do need it.
Yeah, I think the pendulum has really swung back as well. In a lot of ways, I see that in my podcasting space too. That's a big reason why podcasts aren't going anywhere. People are really wanting that humanness. And a whole podcast episode is something you can't really AI your way through,
Yeah.
So that's why I also love it, but I think that's why it's going to be sticking around and is a growing space. But I think you're right. People even that aren't experts or professionals in that space, we are starting to be able to spot copy that's written by AI really quickly. If you're stuck or you're like, can't get started, I like to bounce ideas like, get me started on this, or, with my podcast episode, like show notes. But then, of course, it always will have the line, sitting down with Kayla Dean today and we're pulling back the curtain. And I'm like, I would never say pulling back the curtain. And even though you tell me, stop saying that, it seems like it's, it just has those phrases where you're like, oh my gosh, this is AI. But I do think it can help either get you started or get ideas flowing. Or like you said, a one sentence. Yeah, it can smooth out one sentence. I've used it and dabbled in for like writing a whole email or something. And a lot of times it just loses that story flow or just that humanness. So what is one way that we can make our copy sound more human immediately?
Some of the hallmarks that I notice of like AI copy, people always say it's M dashes. And I'm always like, no, you can pry that out of my cold dead hands. I love M dashes. And
Me too.
I've loved them for years. And it's one of those tools like writers have used for forever, like you can go back and like pick up an old classic book and see M dashes in it. So I always hate when people act like M dashes are like the reason or like the thing to look for, because I write as a human, I still put M dashes in there. I'm like, if you think this is AI, bye. Like, you're not for me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Again, in like a lot of the websites I've audited, I've just looked at so many in the last 6 to 12 months. I was auditing one the other day and it really stood out to me. Like there were a few phrases, like there are these like little 2 to 3 word phrases. They catch your eye and they sound unexpected, but not in a good way, not in a, ooh, I want more of that way. It sounds very like intangible. It almost sounds like those words go very strangely together. Or like someone's copy, it said something about strategic flair. And I was like, can flair be strategic? What is that? It like just stood out to me. And it was just like, I couldn't unsee it once I saw it. And I noticed that a lot in like AI copy is like, it's not standing out in a good way where it's like grabbing attention, like, oh, that's an unexpected blending of words or something. It's kind of like, it doesn't really say anything. You go, what is a strategic flair? That's kind of fluffy. I don't think it really means anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I also noticed, like you said, like cliches, pulling back the curtain.
Yeah.
Kind of just things anyone can say. I noticed like, I mean, if you were to say, oh, like write me a, page of website copy for my services, blah, blah, blah. Here's my services. I find that it just like makes all of those services sound the same. Like, for example, if you're like a brand and web designer and you're like, okay, write a page of website copy for me. Your services are just going to sound like super, super identical to like any other brand and web designer that like put those same parameters in. It's just going to spit out something that sounds exactly the same. And like, okay, yes, it's coherent sentences, it's words, it's phrases. Maybe it's even grammatically correct, but it's sort of this thing where like, it's kind of teaching people to skim and not really pay attention. Like something that we want to do with copies, we really want to grab attention. We want people to read. Yes, people are skim readers. They're not going to read every single word. Every person is not going to read a website the same way. But at the same time, like if you have it be like AI copy and it's kind of got these like weird bland phrases, everything's kind of smoothed out and boring. It sounds the way that it like quote should. Then you're kind of teaching people to just skim and not pay attention and just like, oh, whatever. This is just like the words filling the page. And it's like, that is not what copy is here to do. It's not meant to just fill a page, fill a quota, check off a box. don't even bother having a website if that's what it's there for. We want to grab attention, and we want to grab attention the right way.
And do you have a tip or two that we can do that? Or like, where does someone start if they're like, yeah, I want to be more human with my limited time, with my limited skills that maybe I'm not an expert in copy? How can I do that?
I'm actually working on a product right now that is a website copy template. And one of the things that I'm doing, because I think it's really hard to, if you're not a copywriter, just to sit down to a blank page and be like, okay, let's roll, let's do it. It's the structure, but it's also so much more than that. Like, I find that sometimes people struggle with, they might have everything in the spots that they're, quote, supposed to have it in. Like, they have their above the fold headline, they have their services listed, they have their call to action buttons, but it just has like no spark. There's like nothing really going on. And I think something that's really important, like before you go and like try to write copy, we touched lightly on messaging a few minutes ago. It's definitely going to be going and like outlining things and making sure that you're like prepared to go write copy, because professional copywriters or professional writers of any kind are not going to a blank page and like trying to write something. Before AI, like people were using outlining and note taking and journaling to sort of like create material. And that's something that you can very much like still do. Like those methods have not gone anywhere. But one of the things that I'm kind of working on right now is before people even go to their website, structuring your offers. I mean, it's really like doing that work and cementing what you're selling before you go and like try to write those services pages. Because if you don't know your offer inside and out, it's really going to be hard for you to go and write those pages. And I find that like a lot of people are kind of missing that. They're kind of like trying to like white knuckle a blank page, or they go, oh, I'm selling this branding package and here's everything that's included. But like they haven't gone the work to go deeper to like, why is this different from something else? Thinking about urgency too. Why do people need this now? What's going to like make them go, oh my gosh, I need this in my life. Why is this different? I also recommend going and looking at your customer testimonials. Your voice of customer is really, really huge. Knowing what your customers have said about your experience and your services and just kind of working with you in general is really going to be helpful. And if you don't know, going and asking people is really going to be huge, because something that you can do is you don't have to come up with it all yourself. You can go and like ask people and talk to people, and they might say things to you that you go, that's the headline. That's what I'm going to write about. There you go. You can get those ideas from other people. They don't all have to come from you.
That's a really great point, because I find I'm always so close to my own work that I need somebody else, like a third party, to be like, oh, duh, I see it right there, which we can do for someone else too. It's why it's always worth it, I think, to hire a coach or hire someone else to help you in your business, because it's usually easy for someone else to spot. It's so interesting to me that you said, go back to your offer, make sure you know that inside and out, because that's what I tell people that are like, I don't know, am I ready for a podcast tour? Same thing. If you know your offer exactly and you're confident in that, and you know who that person is that's signing up for that, like you're absolutely ready for a podcast tour. And it sounds like that is where you start before you just crack open a website and like start typing and throwing things on the wall. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And so I think what I'm hearing is the offer needs to come first before those other things.
Oh, absolutely. When I work with clients, I always go through a discovery process, and, it's like finding out those things and learning those things. I think sometimes when people write copy for themselves, they don't go through that discovery process because they're like, I'm me. I should just know all of this. I should just automatically be able to like write all of this down, and it should be really easy. And I think you can like very easily go into a spiral and wonder like why you can't do it. And a lot of the people that I work with, they're highly capable business owners. Like I've even worked with people who went to journalism school back in the day, or they write other things for other people, but like there's just something that's just like holding them back, again, that outside perspective. So I would definitely, if you're feeling really stuck, like that discovery process is going to be really huge, asking yourself those questions, really getting to the core. And if you're struggling to answer those questions, that's a really good sign that you're struggling with your messaging. You're not really sure, like, what are you here to say? And that's more deeper internal work that needs to be done. We like to either talk about copy and messaging in the same breath, or are they the same? Are they different? And it's like the messaging is that underlying work that comes before copy. And if we don't kind of have like the offers down, and not just like who we're speaking to, but like how are we going to frame it? What words are we going to use? What is or what isn't aligned here is going to be really foundational to writing that copy. And I mean, writing anything, not just like website copy, but, emails for your launch, threads posts, carousels, Substack. I mean, anything.
That's really great advice. Okay, so then let's talk about using that AI and how can we use it without losing that voice then? When we do know our message, we do know what we want to say, how can we use it as a helping tool, but make sure that we don't lose that brand voice?
Something that you could do if you've gathered it all together, like into a document, do that discovery process, like get all of the information and details you can. I always do that before I write. I don't write anything and just kind of like, let's go. Let's just see what happens. Unless I'm like journaling or doing an experiment or something. If I'm like sitting down to write copy, I'm like, no, I'm locked in. I've got all my stuff kind of laid out. And something that you could do is you could potentially ask it for some ideas. You could ask it to reflect something back at you, something that can be helpful. You can see the way that I don't like to use AI to write copy, but like something that I've done before is Gemini's in the top corner of every Google Doc now. So, asking it to summarize something or, what are some like words and phrases that are coming up or recurring ideas. So you can ask it some questions that are kind of like framing things and reflecting things back at you. And you can go, oh, okay, it simplified it or it reframed it in a way that's kind of interesting. So I can take that idea and I can take it further. If you are going to use AI, you can use it to sort of like as a jumping off point for ideas. Like once you've gathered all of your stuff, I wouldn't recommend to anyone having a blank page and just going, I'm a podcasting expert, I'm a coach, I'm in this, write me a blah, 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 because you're just going to get crap, frankly. But if you've got all your information in there and you're asking it to reflect things back at you, you can kind of be like, okay, that's interesting. It used that word. Let me go and explore that. And something I like to do, I always have like big notepads on my desk. Like I take things to pen and paper. I'm always like writing down words and phrases. So like maybe you go and play with an idea, see how that works. And use it as like a framing tool. I think that could potentially be a good way to use it as a little bit of a thinking tool and like an idea partner, but not necessarily like replacing that creativity or any like original ideas that you may have.
Right. Because I think that's what draws people to us the quickest too, is feeling that humanness and that we're different than the generic AI or what everybody else, every other coach is saying. There's a reason why I think there's people for all of us. Like there's plenty of clients for all of us because we have different takes. And so that's important to make sure that our own voice and own humanness comes through. Okay, switching gears a little bit. I know you use the phrase trust triggers. Can you first tell us what are those?
Basically, that's my free guide. And the subtitle on that is the psychological levers your copy needs to make them see they need you now. So it's basically like 5, 6, or 7 things. So like my top things that copy needs to have to sort of build trust. So something that we've been going through right now is this like big trust recession. And this has been going on for a while. And just like AI, just like the creative industry, just like anything, that trust has been evolving. Consumer trust has been declining. And people are really rethinking like how they invest, how they buy things, who they trust, how they're going to trust them. So it's really making sure that your copywriting has those trust triggers. You're pulling those levers and they're psych and like literary based levers that your copy can pull to make sure that people are able to trust you and they see, hey, this is a real person. This is someone who is credible and legit and they're going to be able to help me. All that good stuff. And it basically takes you through a sequence of things you can do to make your copy stronger in that way.
That sounds like an awesome resource. And you should definitely go to the show notes. I will have that link there. That'll be a great first place to start with someone's copy. Could be anything, website, right? Captions, emails, that's all copy. I think that we forget that as well. I think we go straight to, it's just a website, right?
Definitely.
This was amazing. I feel like we're probably at the point where people have plenty of things to think about and action step to go get that trust trigger free action guide. So where can people find you then if they want to come hang out with you and follow along in your neck of the woods?
Absolutely. So I've been hanging out on Threads quite a bit these days. So they can find me at theliterary.co on Threads. You can join my email list. I've got all of my links in bio there. And you can also visit me at my website.
Perfect. That will all be in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time today. This was super helpful.
Thank you.
Hey, before you go, if you've ever wished podcast guesting or hosting felt a little easier, you're going to love this. I started a free podcast matchmaking community where hosts and guests can actually connect, swap shows, and find aligned conversations without all the cold pitching and chaos. It's totally free, it's super fun, and it's growing every day. So whether you're looking to grow your audience, get in front of the right people, or just finally get your message out there, come join us. You can find the link in the show notes to join the community.